This is Solside Up. I'm your host, Sol. Welcome to an hour of beautiful conversation. Open your heart and enjoy. Hi everybody, this is Solside Up, and I am excited to have today Rebecca Gordon, my friend from New York. She is my colleague and a very good friend. We've known each other for a decade and share a lot of the same kinds of love, especially for astrology. Now, Rebecca has been a practicing astrologer for 15 years, and she also runs a school. And you have an upcoming class now, don't you, Rebecca?
Yes, I do, Sol.
Yeah.
It is beginning on October 1st, 2020, and it's our most popular course. It's the beginner's course, which is 12 weeks intensive with me. And I've just been preparing for that the last month. So it's been like my favorite time of year. I'm a Virgo, so back to school is my favorite time of year.
And back to school,
yeah.
Well, it's definitely the time for astrology right now, because 2020 turns out to be quite a year, and we knew that it was going to be intense. But little did we know it was going to be this intense. I mean, we saw the astrology for 2020, and now we're in the middle of some quite interesting waves, and we are looking at the last quarter of this year right now. And it's a good year for studying astrology, because consciousness is definitely what we need right now.
Yeah, it's been really exciting. Like the emails that have been coming in over the last month, I think the level of the questions, there's just more questions than ever, not only about the class, but like what is going on in the world, you know, like yeah. We're normally getting questions like, oh, do I have lifetime access and this? And now it's like, okay, yeah, I'm interested in the class, but what the hell's happening on planet Earth right now? And it absolutely, astrology is so much more in the collective consciousness now, because I think everybody who thought they had a handle on reality is questioning. And of course, we're looking, back in 1405, this was happening, you know, and we're seeing these macro cycles of things.
Yeah.
So, you know, it gives us a chance to talk about, you know, pattern recognition and that everything is cyclical, which brings some sense of calm, I think, in the collective. Would you say so?
Well, I don't know, you know, like it absolutely, astrology is for me an eternal love affair. It's just something that I can't get rid of. It's my boomerang thing. Whenever I try to get rid of astrology, it just comes boomeranging back. So for me, it's I've lived with it my entire life almost, and I'm very grateful. I mean, come on, astrology is a door opener when it comes to so many hidden energies inside people and also in the world. We can't see the world of energy, but it's definitely there. And we are, in a way, kind of like weather forecasters, but we are doing the astrology forecast. And it is forecasting these cycles that we have spent decades studying. And it's so, well, you know, one nerd to another, we know how it is when we meet up at the conferences and we start jamming on the astrology cycles. It's always like mind-blowing and insightful and liberating well, it's liberating. It's very liberating. It's like, aha, it makes sense. So, okay, but we don't know whether or not things will pass. This is the thing. I mean, astrology, you know, we don't know how it will unfold. It's also a choice in humanity, right? And I remember, I think it was, there was an astrologer a few years ago who wrote this incredibly interesting article about what now? Because how will history look after the internet, the dawning of the internet? And both you and me were around before astrology boomed like this, like before the internet. Now it's everywhere. And I like it. You know, it has a few shadow sides to it, like you can get into the control freak aspect of the astrology and start, you know, obsessing around like, oh my God, Mercury is going retrograde. What am I supposed to do? And stuff like that. So that's the dark side of it.
I feel like that's also sort of like our role as astrologers. Is like sometimes our clients, they know now that astrology is sort of like everywhere, and people have a WebMD knowledge of astrology. So like, oh my God, Mercury's on my Saturn, and they're freaking out, and they come to us. And I think, it's all of this misinformation too sometimes. And I mean, I try to make clients not so dependent on it. Like personally, I'm like about living my life. I'm not astrologizing life. And I think this is something we both share. We're like, life is meant to be lived. We're not trying to scare ourselves into the next Saturn return. And if clients start to act like that, we have to really come at it from an empowering nature. This is not a practice of fear. And that's why astrology was sort of suppressed in times of history, because people started relying on it in a way that was like scaring everybody to leave their house because Mercury's retrograde. And that's absolutely not what we should be doing. We have to get out there and live our lives. And I look at planets like visitors, they're guests in the house. All right, Pluto's coming to visit. That means make space inside you, right? Make space in your house, invite in the guest, make room,
Yeah, well, that's a good image. I came up with the new term a few weeks ago. I think a couple of months ago, it was the term planet-splaining. When you planet-splain everything, I'm just going to planet-splain you a little bit, and I'm going to do this, over your head kind of talking about the planets. And I think, an astrologer's duty is to make the astrology as accessible as possible for people to understand. But today we are going to nerd a little bit about the coming month. I mean, October is full of it, isn't it? It's like an astrology piñata. It really does have a lot of interesting twists and turns, and it's you're in the middle of a very interesting period, especially where you are in the United States, where you have the election coming up. And I've been looking at that election, especially from a Mars retrograde perspective, as we're in the midst of this Mars retrograde movement, and it is actually squaring Saturn right now, and it will continue to square Saturn until October the 1st. And that could explain some of the fatigue that we're seeing today. Like people get really tired with this one, right?
Absolutely. I can attest to that. I mean, as you were just saying, it's so interesting with the elections coming up, because normally what I do when I'm looking at what's going on with the elections is I just look at personally the position of Jupiter and Saturn. And usually the person who's elected is pretty much a vibrational match to where Jupiter and Saturn are at that time of the elections. Yeah. However, this year it's interesting because 1 month after the elections, Jupiter and Saturn together as a team, they're like, all right, we're done with Cap. We're moving into Aquarius. So that makes me think that 1 month after the elections, there's going to be some big change that happens. Like what we think in November is not the deal 1 month later.
That's exactly what I've been thinking as well. And especially because all these balsamic phases, when, Jupiter is now in a balsamic phase to Saturn just before that new seeding of a new cycle. And in the sign of Capricorn, all these old structures and behaviors, all the habits of humanity and the karma of humanity is kind of like we're re-experiencing a lot of stuff right now that feels like it belongs to a cycle that humanity has gone through before. And it feels like really like this, it's like this ending of something, whenever you get into a balsamic phase. So I'm curious to see what happens actually in relationship to the election in particular, because you have some interesting, especially the two candidates that, two people that I've been especially curious about is Trump is having another return, but so does Kamala Harris. She's also very hot for the moment. So it will be interesting to see what actually happens, but I think we're ready for the future, aren't we?
Yes, we're absolutely ready. I mean, since January, we've collectively all been dealing with what we like to call the Cap staff, which is Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, all in Capricorn. And it's not just that they're there, but it's that every month the moon meets them all, and, Mercury meets them all every few weeks, and Venus meets them all every month. And so every time all the little planets come around and meet the Cap stack, we're reminded of the sublimation of the heaviness, the weight of these times. Not only do they conjunct it, but they oppose it, they square it, and all the little planets, just keep talking to the cap stack. So, I mean, I'm with my team here in New York, I'm always telling them, I'm like, all right, once a month, the moon's conjunct the cap stack, get ready, and Squarespace goes down, or this happens, or that happens. It's always something that's very real, or somebody's car breaks down, So it's like collectively we've been dealing with 6 months of this, and it's sort of exciting to see that in December.
Well, it's going to be a welcome change, that's for sure. I mean, I think Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008, and that's when it all started to unfold. And then there were these Pluto-Uranus squares in 2012 and 2015, and this is like the grand finale of Pluto's passage through Capricorn. I believe Capricorn in 2023 in March. So we're sort of like, I think, like it's the testing time for humanity, and it feels like there's like this world pain coming up, or some sort of fatigue. Like we're so tired of the system. We're so tired of this pressure. We're so tired of, like, how we're constantly pushing ourselves to survive. And it's all these economical structures as well. Like, we have to survive. And in comes COVID, like, ta-da, like, hello, humanity. Now, in the middle of this fatigue, we get this COVID thing. Like, just when we thought we had, like, fires in the Amazon and fires in Australia, and we're like, oh God, and melting ice caps and whatnot. I mean, there's like this sense of impending doom going on constantly, and we have to live with it on an ongoing day-to-day basis. It's not like we can escape it, and that's such a Capricorn thing, the having to confront reality in one way or another, and there's absolutely no escape. Although we will see as well, because as we are coming into the coming months, Neptune will square the nodal axis, and Neptune is in Pisces. So hello, escape. I think a lot of people will certainly daydream their ways out of that one. It's like escapism will be high.
Oh, absolutely. The combination of all these planets at the end of Capricorn, it's like the skeletal systems that we've created, the structures have reached their point of critical mass. All the planets are to the very end, right? It's like, this is no longer sustainable. Just emblematic of the late stage capitalism of everything, of where we're at, what structures are not going to hold us. So there's Neptune, like, valve, right?
Bring the wine, darling. I'll have 2 glasses, please. It's like, it's totally looking for spirituality, that one, actually. It's looking for spiritual connection. And anything that touches the nodes, I come from an evolutionary astrology perspective. This is my background. And there's this thing in the evolutionary astrology that's quite interesting, because they have a lot of knowledge around the lunar nodes. And then when there's this theory that when a planet is squaring a node, it's a very unintegrated principle. It becomes somewhat of a skipped step, especially if you're born with it. Actually, the 79 generation is born with that Neptune square the nodes. There's also one, for instance. And so there's like this energy that is it's really taking a lot of momentum. It's kind of running away a little bit on it's doing its own thing on the side there, and it really pertains to knowledge and to what we believe in, actually, because it tunes into the nodal axis. And we're going to see that during October, it will actually move into even greater focus because of Venus entering Virgo. And the October 1st, was it October 1st that Venus enters Virgo, right?
Yes, so Venus enters Virgo exactly on October 1st.
Yeah, before that, we have Mercury going into Scorpio, and it's going to go retrograde in Scorpio. So what do you think about that, Rebecca?
Yeah, well, I think that we'll be finding out some things that were pushed under the rug throughout this month. It's like, oh, what's under the rug? What did we not get told? And we've already seen a lot of these things come out, but I feel like truth, it's sort of like truth serum, what's been underneath the topic. And I don't know about you, but whenever Mercury's in Scorpio, there's this sense of, I know people sort of edge more towards conspiracies too during this time. Like, oh, I know what's going on. Here's how the world's working, you know. And so I also think we have to be careful with those things because sure, there's a tiny bit of truth to everything.
Yeah.
I'll probably
Yeah.
say that come out then.
I mean, Scorpio is an interesting sign, and Mercury in Scorpio, people with Mercury in Scorpio, they go deep. They go like, I want to go all the way. I want to see the bottom of this, you know, like I want to find these answers. It's quite the detective placement of Mercury, and it can be quite obsessed when it comes to figuring out things, you know, like digging in deep and going even too deep. But we're gonna have to live with it for quite a while because it's going to go retrograde and stay there and sort of move deeper into the layers of our psychology in ways that could reveal, not just on a global level, because this has a personal effect as well, you know, in all our relationship, in everything that we deal with in our everyday lives. I'm sure there will be a lot of enlightening conversations happening and a lot of truth will come through.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, think about like all
Oh
of
yeah.
the couples that were quarantining together, you know,
Yeah.
certainly there was a lot of people that realized, oh no, we can't do, you know, there was a lot of divorces clearly already, but I think there's a lot of people that have stayed together too during this time and grew much closer. And a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, I feel like if people have been married or been together for a long time, it's like they're finally, you know, piercing the veil beneath the surface and pulling up stuff, really getting to know each other's soul.
Yeah.
Level could be.
Oh yeah. I mean, Scorpio is all about intimacy, you know, like into me you see, you know, it's all about transparency and trusting each other, being able to trust each other really deeply. So I, you know, like I like Mercury and Scorpio people just because of that. They're easy to talk to. Nothing can scare them. You know, like you can tell me anything. You know, I'm not scared. I'm not easily scared. I can deal with a certain confrontation in terms of communication. Like, let's talk about these things, and that's I think that's very helpful because. Like today, especially, people need to talk together. You know, like you have families falling apart because of differences in viewpoints. You have that Sagittarius South Node is like, I'm right, no, I'm right. You know, how you have all kinds of like opinions about what's going on and whatnot. And it's actually causing a lot of stress for a lot of families, actually, more than you should think. Because I recently read this article about like, my best friend is suddenly a QAnon supporter and I can't talk to the person anymore. It's like people are really fighting over things that might have a different kind of origin than we like to think. It might come from a much deeper source. I get it that we don't trust the governments anymore, you know, like because there's been a lot of abuse with authority, right? So it's hard to trust authority, you know, like but the whole propaganda thing, you know, that is going on either side, you know, the whole war about the war of the minds, because we now live in the age of the internet. It's so important.
Yeah, I think we have to be extremely careful that we're like about the level of division. Like we ultimately find common ground with people first. Like this is not about, we don't have to politicize everything. And I think these times are certainly dividing families, dividing people in ways. And it's really sad to see this happening, especially with you know, as we see Saturn moving into Aquarius, just to be mindful of that. Like, yeah, there is this division. Clearly, as Saturn represents that dividing and barriers, boundaries in the collective. That's very clear. And staying empowered is key. And knowing what love is, like family, friends, people, all of that. Like, I think we have to maintain our sense of humanity and not go into full out war mode here. And also, as Saturn does go into Aquarius, I keep thinking about as well, you know, that's certainly 2021. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but I keep thinking about what we share and what we don't, like in terms of what media is allowed to share of our personal information. I think the way we connect is going to be really different, and the need to maintain sovereignty, love, humanity, in our core is going to be key. And if any of you don't have a spiritual practice, I would say this is the year to get one. It's going to be, the outer world will be absolutely intense, right? As it has been. And we'll need to resolve internally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, like I did an article for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency last year about Saturn going through Aquarius. And I mentioned George Orwell. Did you know, like the author George Orwell, who wrote 1984? He actually was born with Saturn in Aquarius. And it made me like think of censorship and, you know, free speech and human rights, actually. You know, like I think that's going to be part of the menu for 2021, especially because the whole COVID thing is putting that really up front, you know, like it's really because of all the restrictions and everything we've gone through. You know, some of them have been very hard for certain areas. I mean, it varies, of course, from place to place, but there is this worry, especially that now that we have one of these pandemics, that we can just impose any kind of law right now. Like it's like now suddenly everything is okay. Like there were a situation in our own government where they, you know, like they just wanted to pass a law without going through the normal democratic processes because it was hasty. You know, we needed that haste. And it made me think about something that back in the Roman times, when there was a crisis, they appointed a dictator because then they wouldn't have to go through the Senate and everything, because because of the crisis, they needed somebody to make swift decisions. So it makes kind of sense, you know, that you have some sort of urgency but it also raises the question about, you know, the need for a true democracy in the future. Like we really need to start to trust we need to have better trust between the government and the people. And it's like, that's the whole crisis of the Pluto in Capricorn thing. It's like, now we're at that very last bit of it. And we've seen all this corruption and everything.
Right.
And not just about our leaders, but generally each other, like leadership in general. Why do we always oppose each other? Why do we fight the way we do? Why don't we trust the leadership in each other? You know, like, because this is the time where new leaders will rise, whether it's you or me or anybody around us, or a good political leader or a good economical leader, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I think that, you know, Capricorn's very much the centralization of power. And as Jupiter and Saturn move into Aquarius in 2021, and then in 2024, Pluto moves into Aquarius, I think we will see a lot of the decentralization of power and new power structures, perhaps, that show up. Because right now we've been in this sort of pyramid structure of power.
Sure.
Like it hasn't changed much since feudalism, right? And I think
business as usual, as we say, it's business as usual. We've had that type of thing going on for quite a while, you know, like, and the big beauty of everything, even though it's a sad story, it's that Earth. You know, Earth is going through such a massive crisis right now, you know, with the depletion of resources and overpopulation and whatnot. And this virus thing is just like, if you look at it more symbolic, from a symbolical level, you can see it. It's more like Earth is kind of like shaking in a way. It's kind of like crying out like, hello. It was so interesting when the virus hit for real in February, March last year. Mercury went retrograde through Pisces. We're at the last retrograde phase this year, actually all three of them in water signs. But in Pisces, it went retrograde from 12th to 28th, from 12th Pisces to 28th of Aquarius. And in July, Ceres did the exact same stretch from 12 degrees Pisces into 28 degrees Aquarius. So they're covering the same little bit of the zodiac there. And I thought that was interesting because although we don't talk much about Ceres in regular astrology, this dwarf planet, the biggest of them all, of the asteroids, and the mother, representing in many ways the Earth itself, because she has to do with nourishment, being nourished and fed by Earth in a way, being safe because you get food. And And I thought it was so interesting that she followed the same exact path of Mercury retrograde in Pisces, which was like very, very, graphic for the whole global. Suddenly, the virus was global. Boom! It just happened like that with that Pisces full moon and whatnot. So now we're at the end of 2020. We're getting there. And we will see a last Mercury retrograde in water signs, and it begins the October 14th to November. I can't talk today. November 4th. It's a little difficult to start talking English.
Yeah, I mean the general Mercury retrograde rules, right? Like, sure, it's I always just make a lot of time in the schedule because you don't know what will come up from the past that you will have to address.
Yeah.
Right, best practice to just create space. Like all of these transits, they're all manageable if we have the space to do it. At least this is my philosophy. But if you haven't created the space, we can prepare. We just know make space within yourself and in your life and write it in. Shall we explore the full moon on October 1st? Because I feel like that's quite a full moon. Sure.
Well, that's quite a full moon. We can dip back into Mercury retrograde later.
Yeah, well, Mercury is also doing some interesting aspects, right? Opposing Uranus too. I mean, what are your thoughts? Well, I guess we could, if there was something else you wanted to add to the retrograde first, in Scorpio and all. I'm looking forward to the break, honestly. Like I think.
Yeah. No, I'm just thinking, like, since it's the last of the 3 series, like all the Mercury retrogrades went down in water this year, and it's very important to remember that part of that. What happens with Mercury retrograde is that it moves inwards. So you start questioning, you want to get your own thinking right in a way. You need clarity of mind. So it's about forming your own opinions. It's about navigating the psyche in a way. So therefore the time is needed. Like it gives you the time to process. So it's a very good period actually, because despite the intensity that's going on the outside, Mercury, it's giving this break where you can process. It's a little bit almost like a meditation. And then you will also see that a lot of people, they once we get away from people, once you get away from other people's opinions a little bit, you will see more clearly what you think. Like, oh, that's what I think. Okay, so that's my opinion, or that's how I feel, or that's how I experience things, as opposed to what I read in the newspaper, or what somebody told me, or what I experienced when I went into the energy of other people. Like I got too entangled. Like the confusion will probably, to a certain degree, lift a little bit, right? Which is a very healthy thing. It's like clarity. Yeah. Whoops, I have clarity. So, but let's go into that full moon. It's so interesting. These moons in October. Oh my goodness.
So I agree completely. It could be a great time for all of you to go on, say, a media diet, if you want to take some
media diet,
and really come to your own. How do you feel about things? Because the barrage is real for sure, and Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, perfect time to reconnect to how you feel and about the world, about yourself and your relationships. Keep a life schedule, all of that. So the month kicks off with this full moon. Can you see my screen okay right now? I
can see your screen, and now I can see the chart.
Okay, great. So that is the full moon conjunct Chiron in Aries, and the month kicks off with that. So we're going to feel that a lot, 5 days plus or minus. So you all are already feeling it right now, right? As we're leading up to this full moon in Aries.
Just around the corner. It's building.
Yeah, we're in the buildup. What do you feel about a full moon conjunct Chiron, Sol?
On a personal level, I've been writing these scopes lately, and it's evident for me that whenever I go into that Chiron placement, there is a sense of we're being kind of like confronted with our own humanity, like we're humans. And being human means we are multidimensional. We do not simply live just from the head, right? We have other aspects too. And Aries is, Chiron in Aries is associated with the warrior archetype, or the wounded warrior archetype, where defending yourself, or, standing up for yourself, or in motivating yourself, getting going somewhere, having a sense of direction, doing something despite the obstacles. That's what's going on here. Like it's Chiron is the wounded healer, and there's some flaws to this healer, like you might experience in this particular full moon, because it's Libra sun, and it might have something to do with your relationships, how you interact with people in your relationship, and whether or not the balance is fair, or if there's some kind of injustice going on. And how you respond to that would be very interesting to see, because you might have to transcend some of your own fears in order to meet the challenge. Which, like, translated into like a normal situation, instead of if you have some sort of emotional wound relating to, for instance, being rejected a lot of the time, you would have to find the courage to move beyond that, and then face the challenges in a given relationship. It doesn't have to be a personal, intimate relationship. It can be a friend, it can be a colleague, it can be anybody that you have in your life, but it pertains to your boundaries and to justice to a strong degree. That's what I feel about this thing, but it's not going to be so easy. There might be some woundings and some hurts coming down. There's this dark side of Aries, and it's a little bit overreactive, so you might get into a little bit of a frustrated clinch with somebody, because Mars is still retrograde in Aries, and it squares, as we can see, Saturn. So there might be some reaction to restrictions or delays or stress, or like you're feeling tense and tired to a certain degree, and it's just too much. So that might be like the dark side of it. Yeah.
I mean, isn't a full moon like an expulsion, sort of releasing elements of the wounded warrior, the wounded quality, the wounded masculine, essentially?
Yeah.
We're sort of, things are coming up to the surface, it sounds like. We're seeing the ways that we used to just push through and approach our work, approach our relationships, approach life, right? We're like, well, actually, how is that faring? How does that really make you feel? Is that doing any good? Is this all our old strategies that we've been doing our whole life are showing up in our face? Like, is this actually hurting you? Right? And the wounds around that, for sure, with the Mars retrograde too. It's interesting that it's exactly on Chiron, right? So it's like, deal with your stuff. Just freaking deal with it. There's no approach. There's no way to avoid, I guess, like the scab is taken off. Like it's sort of saltwater cleanse. The wounds are coming up to the surface, especially about whether it's your fear about getting something new started, or the way that you've been pushing through in your work or in your relationship.
Yeah, it could be like this, the awakening to kind of, what does courage mean? What is authenticity? Because for me, like, healing it has to do with becoming authentic, and that can be such a hard thing to do, right? But Mercury is in Scorpio, the mask is coming off, there's some truth involved. We see like a courageous, albeit a little wounded moon in Aries, but it's kind of like, I'm just going to do it even though I'm scared. Like, it's like, I just have to do it, because it's like, this is, like,
do your fears.
This is
time to do your fears.
Yeah, but the interesting thing, it's pre Mercury retrograde, right? So you might have, like, whatever happens on this full moon, you might have it coming back to you on the Mercury retrograde. Like, I don't know, was that a good thing?
Right.
Like, you have to go, like, there is something with that pre-Mercury retrograde. It's in the shadow phase already, so you might have these doubts already coming in. Like, I don't know, like, it's a little bit of a pondering time, I think,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so there it's like there is this like if there's like a classic Libra thing, it's like I have to make a choice. I have to make a choice. I have these two options or three options, and I really have to make a choice. And I'm not really feeling like completely convinced, like because there's like this Mercury shadow phase, Neptune square the nodes, and then this moon Chiron thing. So it's like it's really challenging for that. Yes, I'm going to do that. Give me three of those. It's not really like that kind of direct and normal interpretation of a moon in Aries.
Yeah, agree. Especially Mars retrograde. It's definitely more of an internalized month.
Yeah. It's an internalized month. I like that. Absolutely. All right, but we have some juicy stuff coming up after that. Pluto will go direct the 5th. So that's been a while, since it's been moving forward and it's been going backwards and fine tuning. So for all you guys who have had anything between 22 and 25, well, any cardinals degrees, 22, how far up did it go? Did it go retrograde at 24, 25 degrees? Somewhere around there. So for anybody who has any cardinal planets on 25 to 22 degrees cardinal, when Pluto will go direct again the 5th, I think, finally there will be some forward moving energy, and there might be like a feeling that, okay, finally it's moving forward. I've been stuck in this same place for so long now. These Pluto transits can be pretty hard, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. They can feel, I'd say it's one of the most challenging things. But I think on a personal level, if our listeners know what house Capricorn rules in their chart too, not Capricorn, Scorpio rules in their chart, you could see matters that rule of that house could finally start moving forward again.
Yeah.
A long period of standstill as well, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And Saturn is also direct the 29th. So this month, Jupiter went direct recently. So this month, these three, the triplets over in Capricorn, are finally moving forward. And I think that's going to be felt like a little bit of a relief, like, okay, so something is moving forward despite Mars retrograde and whatnot. There is this feeling like when these three are finally moving forward, it's more or less 6 months of this standstill. And a lot of people have gone through like problems with their career, and like there's like a whole deal of challenges that comes with the territory of a pandemic. So hopefully a lot of those issues might move forward finally. And I think we're always waiting for the direct movement. It's like, yes, finally get us out of this ditch. We've been here in the ditch for such a long time. Move the car forward, please. So I think that's really good. I think a lot of people will love that. And then there's the Mercury opposed Uranus on October 7th, just after. So what do you think about that, Rebecca?
Well, I think there's going to be some breakdowns in the way that we've been doing things and communicate. I'll just forward to that. Mercury opposed Uranus aspect. Here it is. There's Mercury. Can you all see my screen okay?
I can see the screen. Yes.
Okay, cool. So we're going to see there's Mercury in Scorpio. There's Uranus in Taurus.
And I just want to comment that 9 degrees is very interesting because the full moons are happening on that 9 degrees. So it's like 9, 9, 9. It's a very active degree this spring, 9 degrees, 8, 9 degrees. So that's also for this Mercury-Uranus opposition.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anybody who has planets near 9 degrees, you should look out for those. Though I would imagine, because again, it's in Scorpio and so much of the energy in Scorpio with the retrograde too, that it's almost as if there's this basement. We all this sort of basement, sort of like your own personal unconscious, and things are erupting out of there. Sort of realization, like, oh. This has been happening all the while under the surface. I didn't know that whole family was living in the basement, or I didn't know this was happening this whole time. But I would imagine that the days around October 7th and such, like this is the time to make room for what needs to reveal itself. It feels revelatory, like
Yeah, very
things
much.
you need to see are showing up, especially things that relate to your security and your sense of feeling safe in the world, vulnerability. These things come up a lot. If we've been trying to, I would imagine, hold things back, this is a time of, it's almost like truth comes out.
Yeah. And as a health tip for this particular opposition, because Uranus is really, Mercury is like, it's like a classic when it comes to some sort of mental overdrive, overload kind of thing. You know, it's the nervous system going into hyperdrive, actually. So you might have trouble relaxing. You might have trouble getting into your body. You might have a lot of like insights and flashes of genius even, you know, like, whoa, like this epiphany moment. But it's hyperactive. It's super hyperactive. So for anybody who already struggles with a little bit of hypersensitivity and challenges grounding yourself, I think a very good thing to do would be breath and breath therapy, like conscious breathing, sitting down, breathing a little bit, because it really influences the nervous system. And especially if you have some sort of trauma that is you're aware of, it might be reactivated at this time because of the high energy on the nervous system. So anything you can do to help yourself just ground and just find balance and stability again would be super good. I love breathing, and I also do a lot of yoga, these kind of quiet, slow movements. It's really like a medicine for a high Uranus energy.
Yes, beautiful. And I mean, also, right, Mercury, anything with Uranus, it's sort of like, well, stuff comes in that we don't expect. It's
like, surprise for you.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny that Mars will square Pluto for the second time again, just after. So after all this truth revealing, we might have some intense confrontations with people. And the Sun will square that cap stack as well from October 10th to 18th, like one after the other. The Sun will square Jupiter, it will square Pluto, it will square Saturn. So that whole week is like, whoa, okay, time to find your inner diplomat, time to kind of like be a little kind to yourself. Don't push yourself too hard. I mean, if there's an emotional reaction to something, just don't kill each other.
And maybe just the awareness that challenges will come up. Like, you know, the car can break down. These things can happen. Should be expected, you know, as the Sun squares everything. It's like our light is coming into contact with Saturn, Pluto, Jupiter, blowing it up. It's like, all right, it's all, the one thing we can control is how we respond. I mean, life is going to happen. Just, right, have the breath to respond. So in the middle of the month, make space. Challenges, they'll come up.
Well, and it is Libra Sun, you know, it's Libra Sun and Mars in Aries. So the whole theme about selfishness versus cooperation and justice and balance and fairness and, you know, of course, also a biggie with these ones is, you know, gender issues. Like I put in twice as much work as you do, and you know, like that kind of thing that can come up with families and stuff like that, because it's all coming back to tradition. It's those 3 planets in Capricorn. So we might be questioning some of the family traditions that we have had for a long, long time, like how the roles are being played out. So there might be some interesting things going on there that could be a little bit difficult. And in that middle, then comes the Mercury retrograde. So Mercury will slow down, right? And that might be a good thing in all that Capricorn energy, that Mercury slows down and starts thinking before it speaks. You know, like it's just a think before you speak. Mars squares Pluto, Sun square everything. Just think before you speak. Just breathe first. You know, like that could be a good thing, you know, especially then.
Completely.
But there's some breakthrough energy in it too, you know. I don't want to take away that. You know, there's like, that's the thing with all that Pluto and Mars and Mercury and Scorpio and the Sun and the creative principle, you know, pushing on to these Capricorn planets. It could feel like a real breakthrough as well. Like, yes, I won over myself. I won over, like, I'm getting there, you know. A lot of people are going through a very good inner change for the time being. And I think they're liberating themselves from what they thought they had to be and moving into sort of like a deeper truth about their own lives. Like, listen, this is actually who I am. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a
I think that's
peeling of
another
the
way to,
layers. Yeah.
absolutely, as all these planets like Mars, Sun, Mercury deal with the cat stack, it's like, yeah, do we actually have to comply with them? No, you know, and or what, how do we feel about that, right? It's questioning everybody's stance on all of these structures in society or family
No family or
or school
traditions.
or anything,
Or so.
that we're imminent, and what is our relationship to them? Like, yeah, I guess we're being asked to take time to consider that here instead of just react. This very trigger happy reactive culture too. It's been, you know, the whole cancel culture and this and that. Everybody's so quick to jump.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I feel like we need a counter movement, you know.
But I think Mars retrograde made us a little bit more, okay, maybe I will think before I type. You know, I feel the energy is not so feisty, testosterone-ish as it was when Mercury went direct through, boom, you know, speeded through Aries the first time. It was quite intense, you know, it was like a little rash, to be quite
Yeah.
honest. Yeah. Now we forgot to mention that Virgo Venus is also already in Virgo by then. You know, she is also the ruling principle. You know, the dispositor of the Sun in Libra, as she's going through Virgo. What do you think about that Venus in Virgo? That's a good time for upgrading your health regime, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Venus and Virgo gets a pretty bad rap in our society because we
Yeah, no,
all a Virgo and all of that.
we love
Though
Virgo.
we do. It's also like, what do I need in my life? What do I don't? What don't I need? And getting rid of like old clothes that are not you anymore, getting rid of a bunch of old products, clearing out what don't you want, refining things, right? Like clearing through what do you want in your life, and what do you not need. I think it is of discrimination and is the refinement of the beauty. It's not a time, it's not necessarily like Venus just came out with Leo, right? So it's sort of like, well, yeah, as you said, getting clear on like your beauty routines and what routines make you feel good. All of this comes up. I think again, it's an inward focus here. It's a feminine Venus. It's a yin.
Yeah, it's a feminine Venus. And when I think of Virgo, if you look at it a little bit more spiritually, because it's going to oppose Venus, Neptune, October 17th, a little bit in this cap stack square. You know, we'll have Venus opposing Neptune, and then it squares the nodal axis. So it's very active. It's very in the focus. It's coming in as one of those, you know, the main characters is all this square to the Capricorn triplets, and then you have Venus coming in on the side, you know, being extremely forgiving, and almost like a very pure heart's energy is coming in there. You know, like there is something with Virgo, it's the sign of purification. What does that really mean? What are we purifying? Aren't we pure enough? And I'm not saying Puritanism, because I don't like Puritanism, but I'm saying purification. It's like honesty, dignity, being a good human being, doing the right thing. You know, it's kind of like wanting to serve something. It's appealing to a very beautiful part of humanity, which is that heart that I want to help. I want to be there for you. I like that higher aspect of love is coming in with this one. Albeit, I mean, it is an opposition, so it could also lead to all kinds of tricky situations in relationships where you don't know what's going on, type of, I don't know what's happening here kind of thing, you know, like, and if you've had that going on for a little while in your relationships, like, what is this thing, you know, this thing we're doing? I'm sure you will have a little bit of disillusionment going on there, but it's still that forgiving heart. And I really I love everything Venus Neptune, of course. I'm a big fan. What do you think about that?
Well, it's on the heels of the new moon in Libra. So the middle of the month definitely has this focus on relationship.
Yeah,
And right
yes.
after that new moon in Libra shows up October 16th, well, Neptune opposes the ruler of the new moon, right? Venus.
Let's
So
look at that new moon, can we? It's such a nice new moon. It's a nice new moon with Pluto. It's like Pluto had to come along, right?
oh yeah. So there's the new moon in Libra that you all should see. Do you see my screen
I
there?
see your screen, darling.
Let's see if I can.
And it opposes Mars retrograde. That's a little bit of a whoops, okay. But it could make us a little bit more level-headed, Mars is retrograde, so it's a little bit more dampened. It's a little bit more in the background. Maybe
So that moon is really waking up this whole cardinal cross right now, right? The T-square. Yeah.
Oh, indeed.
It's completely, I mean, I would imagine it's in Libra, so it speaks to relationships, right? And it's sort of like, for me, with the Mars retrograde opposing, it's like the word unacceptable comes up. Like, okay, where are your boundaries? It's really, okay, we're going to open up to love, but in a new way. What have you learned, since January about your, I would say even words like how you want to feel, deservability, and, with that square to Jupiter, Pluto, Saturn,
Yeah.
there's so much that comes up here. I guess one thing is like, how have you been holding yourself back from fully opening, or have you been attracting unavailable people, unavailable situations? The patterns in love, it's bringing up all kinds of patterning that's woven through our DNA for a long time. And imagine that we could, if we do the introspective work, that we could get a lot clearer and hopefully like see everything come up and say, hey, I don't need these stories anymore. Throw them into the fires, because this is a time when you can realize stories of whether it's unrequited love, the square to Saturn, or the opposition to Mars, opposition, not having your needs met, all these, sort of sad love stories are going to come up, so you can clear them out and say, actually, what do you choose? How do you want to feel in relationships? What kind of relationship you actually want in your life moving forward?
Absolutely. If this was the birth chart of anyone, I would say, okay, so definitely it's time to keep it real, keep it real. Don't get too flustered about illusions, because underneath that cardinal T-cross, you have a mutual T-cross, which could also, and it squares the nodal axis. And you can also say that, that is on the one hand, you have something extremely unyielding with that cardinal T-cross. It's like, I'm not going to yield. And then you have an incredible flexibility underneath. That's like, one of the partners really trying to adapt, or really trying to, make the shoe fit. Like you have these scenarios where you have people like wanting something to be true, but it's not true. That's a classic Venus Neptune thing. Or being in love with an ideal, an idea of something. And I think, that kind of illusion crushing energy that is part of this whole T-square that is going on could be a very big opening for a lot of people in terms of how they treated themselves, for sure. Like, why do I do this to myself? Why do I put myself in these situations? Interesting. I think, this is really a month where we can clear out a lot of our relationship narratives, because it goes back into the ancestral wound with those triplets over there in Capricorn. It's like, I'm going back to my grandmother's mother and the way she acted in and her mother and that mother, like I'm enough, like it reminds me of that scene in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf is facing the Balrog. If the Balrog is like the beast from the past, and he says, "Thou shalt not pass," like he says to the past, it stops with me. It stops here. Like any pattern that I inherited from my parents or or anything that my culture is telling me how to appreciate and value myself, that's going to stop here. I'm going to figure this one out for myself, because Mercury is retrograde in Scorpio and I'm thinking my own thoughts here. So it's quite, that's a juicy one.
It is. I mean, the ruler of the new moon, right? Venus opposing Neptune. It's clear sharing disillusionment, where we've like false ideals falling away.
Yeah.
Getting real. Yeah.
Keep it real, man. You know.
Yeah.
Keep it real.
Right. Okay, let me stop that share. So there was a couple, I mean, there's another, sure, Neptune opposes Venus. And then at the end of the month ends with sort of a fanfare to a bang of Venus. Venus enters Libra, which is great. The goddess in the Garden of Delight. She's like, okay, coming home.
And coming home. Type of piece again. I'm sorry, darling. I didn't mean everything I said when Mars squared Pluto.
Right. Yeah. And at the end of the month too, Sun opposes Uranus. What do you think of that? So we had Mercury oppose Uranus around October 7th or so, 7th, 8th, right? And then the end of the month, right before Halloween, this is the Halloween full moon in Taurus, and Sun opposed Uranus. So we could look at that full moon and everything at once. Shall we?
Let's do that.
Okay. So October 31st, the full moon of the Halloween full moon, right? There it is. Conjunct Uranus. So that means the Sun is opposed Uranus. What do you think of that one, Sol?
Well, I can't see the chart, my friend.
Oh, let me share my screen properly. There we go. And let me...
Nope, still not seeing it. Maybe you should unshare and share it again. That sometimes works.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
My neighbors are having a party right now. I can hear it. I hope it's not coming through to the gear. But that's just a very good example of the coming full moon, I think. It's that Mercury-Mars opposition, I guess. They're screaming like crazy.
Can you see it also?
No, weirdos. Yes, I can see it now. All right, so it's on 8 degrees, which is like, it's like the full moons are on 8, 9, 8, 9. It's going backwards, to 8, 7. So there's like, now we're at the 9, 8 degrees of the full moons. And yes, it's exactly conjunct Uranus, and it's like perfect astrology, if you ask me. And this whole Uranus in Taurus theme is coming up again. So I think this is just before the election, and I think what is, if we just look at it from a political perspective, all these resources, the economy, how we feed the earth, all these things are coming in because Uranus in Taurus is really looking for new ways to use the resources. It's kind of like opening up an interesting perspective in terms of how do we organize our future in a way, because we need to feed all these people. We all need resources in one way or another. But on a personal level, this one is a big win for your self-worth, because Taurus relates to self-worth. And through looking at the different kinds of lacks, sometimes with the sun in Scorpio, we are becoming extremely aware of our hungers. I'm missing this, I'm missing that. If I only had that, then I could make it work. Like it could be a little bit codependent, both Libra and Scorpio. This is where we learn about our dependencies on others. Whereas in Taurus, we learn about our independence.
Right.
So maybe a lot of people will actually realize on a very deep level what they're worth. This is what I'm worth. I feel like that healing of self-worth, when you work with therapeutic astrology or healing work, it's always the same. You come back to that one thing that people need to work on, and it's that self-worth issue. It's that core issue that I consider the self-worth to be the foundation rock of any being. It's like, it doesn't matter if your hair looks bad or if you don't speak correctly or if you say something wrong, because if you feel your worth, you're not so dependent on self-confidence. Self-confidence comes and goes with age and energy. If you have a lot of energy one day, you're like, yoo-hoo, I feel great. And then the next day you don't want to talk to people because you feel like shit. But if you have self-worth, you don't judge yourself like that. You just go, today's this day and tomorrow is another day. And it's like a more stable kind of thing. And I think a lot of people want that in their lives. And now's the opportunity to kind of look into that.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, also perhaps it brings like to a head all of this question about what we actually value in our lives, like how we want to spend our time, right? Which has been since the beginning of this COVID, right? Since January, sort of, all right, this whole Capricorn thing is crushing in the way we've all been doing business and working in the world. It's slowed the entire planet down. It's made everyone question, right? What do we really value? How do we spend our time? And as you said, like how our self-worth, what does our self-worth come from? Has it been coming from this thing that you've been doing over and over in a certain way? And what do we value, right? So we've been in the whole Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn time where money and growth and all of this expansion, exponential expansion, right, has been this value of society. And people sort of internalize that unconsciously. Oh yeah, keep growing, keep expanding. And I guess we're seeing right now the collective result of just constant expansion, which is not a very healthy society internally or externally. And this seems to bring that to a head, right? Like what we value and a breakdown in those values. Like it's really kind of speaking to, is there another way to do this? Is there another way to relate to money and time and our personal worth? All of these concepts come up with the Taurus Scorpio axis, especially the whole like time is money paradigm, you know, that the cap stack, everything's bringing to a head. Everybody has reached that point of critical mass in their work stories. Is there another way? Is there another way to value ourselves in the world? Not in this hourly fiscal way. You know, I think people are going to be coming to realizations around what you actually want to do with the fabric of your day. I imagine there's going to be people that are like quitting also jobs and things they've been doing, like, you know, this isn't giving me value working where this is not me. And Uranus is always quick, right? So it's sort of like enough. Like one day it's just like, you know, unacceptable. I'm done with this. It has that quality of freedom.
Wow,
in the end, it's about freedom.
Yeah, this is definitely the awakening of being a rebel. Give me freedom. And like a rebel is an archetype that when freedom is not given, it's then we start to rebel.
Yeah.
You don't rebel if you have freedom. Then you have freedom. Then people trust you to have freedom. But if you're not trusted to have freedom, you will rebel. So anything that's about control issues, if you feel controlled by somebody or supervised, or like somebody's micromanaging you, or your job is not exactly the way you, you know, feel yourself to be, it's a strong individuation signature, this Uranus. It's like, I need to be me. You know, I need to be more authentic in me. So it can be quite a revolution for some people. And in more mundane terms, it can absolutely like talk about surprising news and surprising events, and just like a turn of events that weren't exactly what you saw would happen, like but indeed an important event that, even though you don't want to, you have to, you might see that 3 weeks later, oh God, yes, letting go of that one thing opened up something entirely new. It's not always we want to let go of things, you know, like we hold on and we hold on and we hold on. And then Uranus comes and knocks the door and says, honey, it's time for a little revolution. And I think I will just take away this kind of like fake security you have, and you don't need it anymore. Let's cause an earthquake.
I've seen a lot of that with clients when people are holding so tightly onto things that have outlived their usefulness, and you're in the midst of the Uranus or Pluto evolutionary transit. It's like, if you're still holding on and you've moved on and your soul has moved on, well then then you're going to be let go. And that's going to be a welcome that in. You've been wanting that, but afraid to act on it your whole life. So this is like, you might get set free, although it's going to feel very untimely. Oh, but I didn't want it to happen now. All these stories, right? But it's just like, this is your freedom. You know how in martial arts, you want to take in the punch. Okay, that's happening. Let's dance with it. Let's move with it and open up to this freedom.
Well, it is what I've been thinking a lot about lately is that we have this need for change, right? There's this huge need for change. We need to change the structures. We need to change the economy. We need to change everything because it feels like that's what we have to do in order to fix things, you know, like because it feels broken. And then you get these what I call the revolutionary romantics who are like, yay, revolution. Yes, that's what we want. We want it yesterday, you know, and they. Right. And they don't consider the price for revolution. And revolution takes time, you know, like it's just a matter of fact. It's so scary with change. Sometimes just opening up to somebody on a level you haven't done before. Or, you know, we're talking Scorpio full moon here. It's also about, well, the full moon of Scorpio sun, that is. So it has to do with intimacy. So there might be some breakthroughs in terms of how you open up to yourself and how you show up with other people, and it can be quite exciting too. You know, I love Uranus transits because I always meet so many exciting people at that particular point. It's like, oh yeah, my people are here. Yeah. Love it. Yeah, of course. Oh. Like, so I always meet these wonderful, exciting, progressive people who give me a nugget of something interesting that pulls me forward in my evolution in one way or another, like this wonderful moment of synchronicity. So that might be something too, you know.
Synchronicity is a great word for anything involving Uranus too. Sometimes, like as shocking as they can be, pay attention to the woven beauty of the synchronicity in your life. I see that always with Uranus trans. It's like, oh, that's happening now, but wait a minute, that's also going on. What does that mean? What else could this mean? And follow the trail, you know.
And I think that's a good way to say it, because during the whole time that we have this very cocktail of Scorpio and Pluto and Capricorn and whatnot and Libra and everything, all our relationships are being brought into the surface. At the same time, we have Neptune squaring the nodes. So stick to your spiritual practices, do your breath work, keep to your daily routines, even if it feels chaotic for this particular moment in time. Cultivate a contact with something that's not necessarily material, you know, like your soul, for instance, or whatever word you want to put on it. Just cultivate a connection inwards in one way or another, because it's just going to help you so much to move through this particular time that we're living in. It's like the medicine of the moment. I think it's the only thing that really keeping sanity, you know, available. That's where the sanity is. It's in good, deep meditations and breath works, and it doesn't have to be sparkly and full of rainbows and unicorns. It's just right. Sit and just breathe and see if you can work through some of the tensions of the body and the breath. All right, so there, we made it through the month of October. We're already in November.
That's such a great point. And if anybody wants to go deeper and learn astrology, we have an offer that the astrology school starts again. The 15-year running school starts this October on the 1st. So if anybody wants to learn, I think Sol has the link.
Yeah, I will put the link underneath. And I can highly recommend Rebecca's work. I know you also wrote a book about medical astrology, which is one of my favorite fields. And I think I will have to pull you back to my podcast and have a little talk about those things as well, because I really, health is so important right now. You can see, like, it's not just an option, it's mandatory. If you want to stay through, these times where we are so interconnected and we're so, it's such a complicated energies that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Keeping your health strong is absolutely what we have to do. So absolutely check out Rebecca's school, and yeah, thank you for coming, my friend. It was really lovely to see you again.
So it's been an honor to be here and wonderful to see you. Thanks for having me on your